Dalton, Riley, Wolves and Wagers. 21-point blowout win for the Timberwolves against the Nuggets, right? I'll let you start off, but awesome win. Big dub for the Timber Puppies.
I mean, yeah, can't ask for much more than that, right? After blowing a 22-point lead against the Hawks. And not only that, but ended up losing by, I think it was 13. Like, that was a complete 180 of that game. So to come out against the defending champs on your home floor, defend the court, that was big. Very proud of the boys for that. Betting was pretty good for us too that night. I wish Ant would have gotten to 30, but we're not here to talk about the gambling side of things. We're here to talk about the Timber Pups. I'm going to start out with the bad. There's not a lot, so I'll just knock those out of the way because we got a lot of good stuff to talk about. I'm going to start with Jaden and Ant, each having 4 turnovers. Especially Jaden, I was kind of surprised by that stat. I'm guessing a few of them were like offensive fouls or something like that, because for a guy whose usage rate isn't that high, having 4 turnovers like that is not the most ideal. And Ant just has to clean it up. A lot of them are still just the sloppy ones, where he kind of gets lazy, and that's what it is. But outside of that, they're really the only 2 things I have. Rudy going 0 for 7. Not in love with that from your center who shoots nothing but dunks and layups. So, but he'll clean that up. And then I think this is just the Cat we're going to get now. And in what was a pretty good Cat game overall, still 7-19 from the floor, 37%. Right? I'm not going to hate on him too much, and I actually have a lot of good things to say about him later on. But man, that field goal percentage for a guy who's been really efficient throughout his career, I want to see that start to tick up.
Yeah, that's the biggest one for me is Cat once again. You obviously look at the box score of 21, 8, and 4. When you win by 21, you're pumped. But if you actually watch the game, it's just different. And Cat, when you look at 25% from deep, 37% from the field, like that's not going to get it done from an all NBA type of player. But overall, not a lot of negatives. I mean, you just look at that score and you just watch the second half and not have to really worry, and you can just go into the rest of your night just having a really happy feeling compared to the just absolute disaster of the second half. But yeah, let's talk about some of your positives, right? Because there's a lot of them.
Yeah, I'll start here with Mike Conley. I know you're not the biggest Mike Conley guy, but he was 7 for 9, 6 assists, and he didn't have any turnovers. And I wish I would have found the tweet, but I saw a stat, something like he's got 114 game minutes now without a turnover. That kind of shocks me. And so he's kind of doing exactly what they want him to. Ideally, you wouldn't need him to take 9 shots. And we'll talk about shot distribution later on. But at least he made 7 of them, right? So nice game from Mike Conley there. What'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, and that stat is unbelievable. And that's what you want next to Anthony Edwards. You kind of talked about the turnovers being a little problem for Ant. You don't want that to be doubled down from your point guard. So to have that's a Tyus Jones type of stat.
Exactly right.
And that's who we would love next to Anthony Edwards. So to get that out of Mike Conley, and that's why I did not even look at any of his unders tonight, because I had just a little bit of a feeling. Now, 17 points, wasn't really thinking that, and you add in 6 assists, fantastic. I'll give him his credit.
Yeah, and so nice game from Mike there. I did like the Ant shot selection. I wish he would have taken more, personally. I know you probably do too, and I'll get to that eventually later on. But for the most part, it didn't seem like he was just trying to, draw the foul and floating away or fading away on his drives to the rim like he had been earlier in the season, which is fine. Like we want him driving constantly. But that game, it seemed like he was going with a little more of a purpose. Like, I'm going to try and finish through contact. And if they call the foul, they call the foul. Right. I love the mid-range game. That's been very, very good for him this year. Like in years past, yeah, when it goes in, it looks very pretty and it's awesome, but he wasn't the most efficient from the mid-range. But this year he's been lights out from 3. So liking a lot of what I've seen from Anthony Edwards, but I just wish he would take more shots. And I'll bring it up now. I'll pull up the quote from Dane Moore. Fantastic quote. Post-game quote here from Anthony Edwards. Started with myself, just can't come out being selfish, worrying about how many points I want to score. just playing within the game, playing within the flow. I think that's the main thing with me. I'd be worried so much about scoring and how many points I got and how many points I'm trying to get instead of just worrying about the little things, rebounding, boxing out, getting back on D. So tonight I wasn't really worried about scoring. I was just worrying about what we can do to win the game. So I think if I come out with that mentality and not worrying about points, we'll be all right. I agree with that. Very mature quote from a 22-year-old. But I think when the going gets tough, Ant just can't be shooting, what was he, 8 for 16 from the floor? He needs to be at closer to that 25 field goal attempts. And in the playoffs, he will. We saw against Denver. So I'm not going to look too much into that for the fourth game of the regular season. But I would like him to be a bit more aggressive, maybe from three, right? Like he's been shooting super efficient from there. So take a few more of them. He hasn't really been taking the attempts that he has in years past. So maybe just eliminate the kind of the floaters and stuff like that, but go to more of his hot spots and get closer to that 20 field goal attempt, per game mark, because they need him. They need him to score.
Yeah, and kind of just the biggest positive on my side is Finch. Tonight was fantastic, and I'm not saying like him getting out coached by Quinn Snyder is a bad thing. It wasn't like an obvious thing, but Quinn Snyder did out coach Chris Finch in that matchup. Mm-hmm. And that we both are a big fan of Quinn Snyder, but Finch was fantastic. I literally felt like he just had complete control of the game, was able to literally just keep that lead to the point where it was just kind of just coasting through the second half against a team that was, and probably is a top 5 team that I've seen in my lifetime. I don't know about you, but the Nuggets last year and Bruce Brown, yes, is not on this team, but I mean, awesome win. But yeah, Finch, fantastic job. So that's my big positive. But I know you want to dive into some of your others on your list.
Yeah, and this guy we both have as a positive. We have all year long. We were super excited when they got the deal done. I can't believe, I guess I can believe it because I know he likes it here and whatnot. But to turn down more money to stay in Minnesota, that shows like the culture shift that's happened. But Naz Reid, man, 16 points in 15 minutes or 19 minutes, whatever it was, something like that. Regardless, he was 6 and 9 from the floor. He could be up for 6th man of the year. I literally think if the season ended today, he might win it. Like, yeah, he's been that good.
Hardaway, maybe.
Oh, it's funny. But yeah, Naz Reid, you want to talk about him?
Yeah, when you look at this team and 3 years from now, who am I most confident will be on this roster? I'm hoping and praying Anthony Edwards. I think we both are. Jaden McDaniels obviously getting inked up. We both agree is I think kind of a team friendly 5-year deal.
Yep.
And I think third on that list is Naz Reid. I'm not even at this point. I think it's Naz Reid. The ability to play next to Rudy, when you look at the advanced metrics, they're fantastic. They are fantastic. And obviously his connection with Ant, we've seen it time and time again. When they both are cooking, it's just fun to watch. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Naz Reid, just another fantastic game. I'm just happy that we had him for, I think, another, 3 years after this year, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, so
2 years for sure. I think it was a 3-year deal. He was unrestricted, so I think he's got 2 more after this year.
Okay, yeah. So was really impressed with Naz, and hopefully he can continue to get more minutes. And as the season goes on, especially for Rudy and for Cat, to maybe get them a breather in some of these games, and Naz can continue to provide production at the 4 and the 5. Yep. I'm fine with playing Anderson and Naz out there as well, which providing that versatility coming off the bench, like you said, dark horse 6th man of the year. I think we talked a little bit about it in the preseason, not very much, but I don't remember what his odds.
I think you even put a little bit on it, or maybe you talked about it when we were discussing.
Yeah, I talked about it, but I don't remember what his odds were. And I just was like, even if he plays fantastic like he is, he's still not even like considered one of the favorites. But
Right.
in my opinion, he should be. If you actually watch Timberwolves ball and have NBA League Pass, which has been a great investment already, even on my side of things. But Naz Reid and Dominique Wilkins said it best when he's playing at this caliber level. He's an all-star type of player. Naz Reid. And that's from an outside perspective, all-star.
Right. That's not
I don't think
Minnesota
he's
media
wrong.
there.
Yeah, I don't think he's wrong, but he was obviously, I think, 4 for 4 from deep. So hopefully Naz can like kind of right this ship and hopefully kind of come around and keep this consistency. But that's my just a huge positive from this game all around, right?
Yeah, and this extends just further on than only the Denver game. But I like how you bring up his position flexibility and mentioning him with Kyle Anderson, because he has been good with Rudy. And I'm envisioning some point this year where you have point Kyle, right? Then Jaden at the 2, and then you have Kyle at the 3, Naz at the 4, Rudy at the 5. Like, think how big that lineup is, and how like lethal they could still be. Like, it wouldn't be that clunky of a fit either.
No.
They have a lot of different options to counter how teams want to play them, and they can punish them for going small. And if big ball isn't working, they can just say, you know what, Cat, you know what, Rudy, Naz is cooking right now. We're going to leave him out there. We're going to let him play for the next 10 minutes. And you're just hoping that Rudy and Cat are okay with that. They're paid to not be okay with that based on their contracts. But if that's what it takes to win ball games, there's just so many different ways the Timberwolves can win each night, whether it be Anthony Edwards going off, whether it be more like this Denver game where it was just a little bit of everybody helping out, right? Like the shot distribution was pretty evenly, and that nobody was jumping off the stat sheet. So love Naz. We had to show some love to him. We'll go to the other side of the ball here, talking about defense. I mean, Jamal Murray, 5 of 16, Michael Porter Jr., 2 for 11, right? And I'll even take it a step further. Jokic was 11 for 23. We're talking about a guy who last season shot 63% from the floor, right? Like, so the fact that you held those guys to all Jokic under 50% shooting, and then Jamal and MPJ, shooting tour dates, like, that's pretty good. And a lot of that was Cat. I wish I didn't find it. I looked right before we started filming. I remember it said when Cat defense on Jokic forced 3 turnovers, and Jokic was like, I don't want to guess what the field goal percentage was because I can't remember, but he didn't shoot well against him either. So Cat did a pretty good job on Jokic. So I'll give a lot of love to Cat on that end.
Yeah, and just kind of watching this game and just kind of, thinking about Karl-Anthony Towns, this type of performance like really provides me a lot of confidence going in the playoffs that he can literally wall up and just do his job and just do the thing that needs to get done to get the dubs. And Anthony Edwards is going to do his thing. Jay McDaniels is going to do his thing. But I'm just really excited for Cat. And throughout this regular season, Cat might have to take a breather. Rudy might have to take a breather because Naz is cooking, and that's fine. But come the playoffs, we're going to need Cat and Rudy to be at their best.
Mm-hmm.
Because you look around this Western Conference right now, and when you pay your 4 and 5 that much money, they have to be able to produce in the playoffs. Regular season, I'm fine with them not playing 35, 38 minutes a night.
Yep.
Get Naz out there, run Kyle Anderson. Like, hey, it's all right. Let's keep these guys healthy for the playoffs. But when that time comes, and it will, because Anthony Edwards is going to take us to that point, we're going to need Cat and Rudy to step up. But yeah, Cat played awesome on the former MVP tonight, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, we had to talk about that. Just can't understate that. We've fairly given Cat a lot of, criticism this year as fans. We watched every single game. But from that aspect, really, really good. Proud of him on that. I think Joker almost only finished with 3 assists too. And a lot of that's because, MPJ 2 for 11, Jamal Murray 5 of 16. But that's big, I said one of my keys coming into the game was containing Jokic, and they did that for the most part. I think he only finished with 25, which is kind of funny to say only 25, but we know what he's capable of, and to be able to contain him and run away, keep the lead. Early on they were up big. Denver got back into it, but for the most part they kept him at an arm's length away, and it was a really good bounce back win. And I don't know if I have much more to talk about this game unless you do, but we're also going to do a preview here for the Jazz game coming up tomorrow.
Yeah, no, and that was kind of what I wanted to jump into as well. So when you kind of look at this Jazz roster, what are kind of things that you're either wanting to stop, or what are the things that you're looking out for when you kind of look up and down? I got a couple, but I'll let you start with what do you think about the Utah Jazz so far this season?
Well, right before we started filming here, we were both kind of surprised to find out, as of now, Minnesota's 7.5-point favorites. Like, I get it's at home and they're coming off a 2-day rest. And I just checked. It doesn't look like any of the Jazz are on the injury report. I'm kind of surprised considering the Jazz played tough against the Wolves last year. I think they split and they were kind of a problem team for Minnesota, right? So I think it starts with Lauri, which is the easy cop-out answer because he's their best player. But he does a lot of things that can give Minnesota trouble, right? Like Rudy's can't guard him on the perimeter. And if Cat starts to struggle to do that, what's the solution, right? Do you just throw out Naz and say, hey, we need something? Do you move a guy like Kyle Anderson on him and say, just try and hold your own? We need to contain him on the perimeter and we can have help inside, in the post if he tries to post you up. So I think it starts with Lauri, containing him because he's such a lethal scorer from pretty much all three levels. He can beat you anywhere. He's really developed a nice game over the years, which, Timberwolves draft pick, by the way. I don't know if people remember that or not. So I think it starts with him. You're going to have to, I think you make Jordan Clarkson take tough shots. Last year, he killed the Wolves by making tough shots. I think he had like a 30-piece against him one game. But I think you'll much rather, kind of just like with the Denver game, you're okay with Jamal and MPJ taking contested jumpers, right, instead of high percentage looks. So I think that's what they needed to focus on, is making the Jazz guards beat them and not Lauri.
Yeah, and I just look at the roster and who's going to guard Anthony Edwards. And I just don't see a good fit.
That's a great point.
If you want to throw Colin Sexton on him, Ant will bully him, and he'll just get to the rim, and then he'll dump it off to Cat or dump it off to Rudy. I mean, PHT maybe, but I think Anthony Edwards could. I might be back on the 30-plus train in this matchup, because I think we're at home here for a little stretch. So if we can kind of get some momentum, because then I think we're on the road against like Golden State. I think Phoenix is during that stretch as well. So, but overall, yeah, I think I'm not too worried about John Collins. I'm not too worried about some of these other guys, right? But overall, what are some of the keys on the Timberwolves side for this Utah Jazz matchup that either excites you outside of Ant or any big keys?
I think you just take care of the ball, right? They've done a better job of that the last couple games. And take care of the ball. You're going to be able to beat a team like the Utah Jazz, and it gets you in the rhythm of good habits, right? Like they got the Celtics after the Jazz, and like you mentioned, they got a couple with the Warriors. They got the Suns coming up. Like these are some tough matchups, and you can't be in the rhythm of bad habits against lower end teams, and then all of a sudden you're going to get punched in the mouth when you go play some of the top end teams in the league. So you take care of the ball. I love what you said about Ant. Wasn't even really thinking about that, but that's exactly right. I don't think they do have a guy who can contain him. So I think last year they played some zone. So you got to make perimeter shots. We've mentioned that throughout these Wolves After Dark episodes. Making perimeter shots is a staple for this team. I think it will be against the Jazz because I'm expecting some zone defense, especially with a guy like Walker Kessler in the game, right? You just let him roll down low and do his thing, and then so that makes it tougher to screen and stuff like that. You don't have as many pick and rolls that can be successful. So you make your jumpers. I'm expecting a big Ant night. I really am, even after his quote and whatnot. But that's what I have for that game.
Yeah, and kind of my last part is games like this, you just have to win. With kind of how the West is starting to lay out, I have the Utah Jazz at the bottom of that. I don't really even have them competing for a play-in this season. And that's no disrespect to this roster. I just think the West is that deep. when you look at a team like Minnesota, currently I think they're eighth, ninth. Now, obviously, we're only 4 games in, but they're probably in that range based off of how some of these teams have played. So you got to win games like these at home, especially with some of the games coming up. And I think Anthony Edwards is that guy. I think we were able to cover on the 23.5, but barely.
Barely.
And I think he's got a lot more in the tank for Saturday night. And hopefully Target Center is packed, Rye. I'll let you close out this episode, but come on, Target Center, bring the juice. Like, I know Utah isn't the most exciting matchup, but this is a Saturday night, and we need to get this dub. Let's get above 500. Let's get some of this energy cooking. Let's get on a little winning streak. Let's go with this home stretch. Let's go undefeated during this home stretch. Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, but I'll let you finish this one out, Rye. But excited about tomorrow's matchup.
Yeah, I loved a lot of things we touched on. This Timberwolves team does feel different than years past, at least after this Denver game, right? Like, that's a good statement response after just, blowing a huge lead in Atlanta, right? Like, old Timberwolves teams don't go beat the defending champs after a game like that, right? It might take them a few games to get back into it. Last year, what did we start? Were we like 5-11 or something at one point last season? Like,
something like that.
I was kind of in a doomsday situation where, like, man, we don't have a pick, we don't have anything, this team's not good. But yeah, I like what you said. If you told us that Wolves would start 2-2 to start the season, we'd probably take it. It wasn't the route I thought we would get there, but at the end of the day, 2-2, right? Got some tough games coming up. I hope the Target Center is rocking, like you mentioned. It should be. We're on a bit of a hot streak here for gambling, so we're loving that. Hoping you guys have been tailing. Another good night so far tonight as well. But yeah, we appreciate you guys for tuning in, and stick around for tomorrow's episode.